Okay, so today my guest is Joseph Glover, an incredibly special human being. He's lived a wildly varied life that has seen him front a heavy metal band, found a tech business in his early 20s, build award-winning computer hardware, and marry a doctor. And he's not even 40 yet. He now lives in Snowdonia National Park, has got 2 kids, is business systems developer for a large civil engineering company. And really interestingly, has the words "full of sorrow" tattooed on his lower back. So I know where we should start to get this conversation going. Welcome, Joe, to the Excitable Soul Podcast. And talk us through the thinking behind the tattoo.
Well, thanks for that, Jimbo. What do they call people that like clean up streets? They're garbage men, but you call them, what's it, refuse operatives?
Technicians.
Yeah, you've just absolutely shined a turd of my life to make me seem impressive. Tech business in my early 20s, married doctor, frontman from. Yeah, right.
I think genuinely the way we should, the phraseology that we should use here is that you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter.
Okay. Still gonna smell like shit
though. and I've got to be honest, I already want to just kind of niggle you in the ribs because I haven't said anything there that isn't completely factual. Your ability to feel comfortable with it or not, that's totally different.
Well, it is true. I do have "full of sorrow" tattooed just above my ass crack, and I do seem to recall when we went to get it done, and he was there like lining it up on my back. Whereabouts do you want this, mate? I was like, a bit lower, a bit lower. I'm a bit close now. Are you sure? I was like, well, I wear my jeans really low, so yeah, bit lower. Yeah, I often get "bull of Soford" when people see it. I had it done in exchange for a free pint in some Midlands pub in Nottinghamshire. But full of sorrow.
Yeah. So there's meaning behind the kind of the tattoo choice. Just talk us to a little bit about the journey.
I've kind of found that you don't really know what you're going through until you come out the other side of it, and then when you come out the other side of it, you kind of you can sort of call that a chapter, and then you give those chapters in your life I don't know, a heading or a name or something that sort of represents that window or that time period in your life. And I think when I had that tattoo done, which I'm very proud of and don't at all regret.
Of course.
Yeah, and it still looks incredible. It's not a big blur on my arse now, and I don't get tramp stamp all the time. And prison isn't obviously a place I don't want to go, but it absolutely should be a place that I never end up in, because I'll definitely be full of sorrow. I mean, as you know, our musical upbringing was somewhat eclectic, with you always playing, was it 5-star Michael Jackson, so much Michael Jackson, just purely Michael Jackson, really, and then
unashamedly
oh, absolutely amazing. I love Michael Jackson. Yeah, so a lot of Michael Jackson coming from you, and then when Richard was living with us, he came in with, like, I'll try and big him up a little bit, with some heavier influences and some good heavy music. But
because
both know the reality
More Than Words, that riff.
And Skid Row and Danger, and spending 3 hours in the bath trying to get his tight jeans to fit, so he can go out with a chain from his nose to his nipple, because the 80s were a bad time for rock and roll. But he still played, music of a heavier persuasion. So, and we all shared a room.
Yeah.
So, we heard all these different musics, and then our parents, Dad there with his Ralph McTell and Eric Clapton and Tom Waits. The music that Dad seemed to listen to always seemed to have like a lyrical influence with it. Like there was meaning behind the writing.
It's like a poetry almost.
Sure, and so I always sort of liked that. And then with Michael Jackson, it's all about how he moves and how what rhythm can do to you, and this idea of like expression through movement. was ace, and then the heavier stuff just seemed to be this fantastic way to let it all out. It's just like it was cathartic.
Yeah.
It was almost like this weird. I kind of always thought about it like the more you get into heavy and heavy music, it's like falling down a hole, and there is no bottom to it. You just keep falling, and the further you fall, the heavier the music gets, and the more you love it. And I guess that was it for me. You know, my own musical taste was that I had no musical taste. I just kind of, I liked Destiny's Child. I was a
Yeah.
huge Spice Girls fan.
Yeah.
You know, Celine Dion, love her. Right, like that was me. And then you hit puberty and you go like, right. So what does music mean to me? And it still meant nothing. I was just, still just, MC, DJ, like whatever you had on in the old car. Just anything that would make you move was what we listened to. And that's all
Yeah.
music was. And then it wasn't. And puberty kicks in and it messes with your head, and you start going to these darker places. And I started to find that listening to heavier music was a retreat from it all.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it was a slippery slope. It was Limp Bizkit, new metal had just exploded, and it's not very cool now. I guess it wasn't cool then either, but I thought it was amazing.
Are you kidding me? It was the coolest.
It was the coolest, yeah. And I think Limp Bizkit put out My Generation, and I thought he said My Ginger Generation. And I was like, yes, representation. That's what it is. And so I became the biggest Limp Bizkit fan, and I was like, oh, he's definitely ginger under that red hat. That's why it's red.
Yeah.
And Limp Bizkit leads you to Korn, and Korn just delivered something that just knocked me off my feet. It was something that I never heard before in music, whereby you had metal. Certainly, when you're of that age, has this impression of being macho and strong and violent and demonic, perhaps, or dark, and it's a bit scary. And the reality is, it isn't that at all. Metalheads are just the nicest people, and we all share that this heavy music is the way in which they express themselves.
Yeah.
And and Korn was my sort of awakening to all of that. These group of guys where the front man was this somewhat effeminate, very thin, gaunt, addled rock star that had this, influenced heavily by the Cure and bands of the 80s, and he would do this Pixies thing where the music would be quiet and then loud, um, and his lyrics were all about his relationships and how he saw the world, and his relationships with his parents or friends, or where he sees himself in society. And so you sit there and you start listening to lyrics, and he would never publish the lyrics in the CD sleeves and whatnot. So you'd just be trying to work them out yourself, and I loved it. I just loved it. That, and they all down tuned and played 7 strings, and Fieldy played his 5-string bass and he slapped it around. And back in the late 90s, he just had these awesome dreadlocks and would just bang his head harder than anybody else in live music. And he'd just do this freak out on stage where he was the only guy there, and I just thought that was incredible.
And you know what, the layers to this as well are massively important. And so I guess there's a few things just to help connect the dots for our listeners. First is, and I should have really covered this in the introduction, Joe is my brother. You've met our sister Rebecca, and we're keeping it in the family because we've got some stories to share. So Joe's been agreed to come on and subject himself to some of my questioning here for everybody. I think the kind of the layers here, though, Joe, was, you talk about being influenced by all the people that are around you, but that felt a turning point for me in that your level of influence over me went through the roof. Like, I'd never listened to music like that. I'd never even begun to believe that there was anything in that type of music for me. And then all of a sudden I found myself deeply connected to the bands and the music that you were listening to. It was everything in terms of your identity was shifting. Those massive G-star big trousers, and you even like braided your hair. Got Rebecca to braid your hair, and I remember going, "Oh my, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And look at him like pulling that off. Like, it doesn't look ridiculous. It looks amazing. And like, he's fully embracing it. I want to do that. And then realized I couldn't pull that off. Like, I got Rebecca to braid my hair too, and I took it out 3 minutes later because I was like, what? what am I doing?
You can't have the looks, the skin, all these brilliant attributes, and then be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a what do we call them in Nottingham? We call them grebs, don't we?
Yeah.
I'll be a greb like my little brother.
Those off. Yeah. So there's something about like this turning point moment for you where you were discovering yourself, and you were discovering what enabled you to connect with yourself. But it wasn't just about you, it was also about the way you were connecting with the world around you as well, because I know firsthand the influence that then you had on me, and actually the offshoots of things that are really significant. So Incubus are a band I found because of you, but they were so quickly dismissed in your heaviness journey because they never descended past the level. But for me, that was my level. That was good. Right the way through to us going to gigs and festivals because of some of this. And do you remember going to that Korn gig in London?
Yeah, and I was in America, wasn't I? I was in California working, doing the whole Camp America thing, and we had this time. I mean, this is all kind of really early internet days, no social media, and I had this really old Toughbook laptop that I'd taken with me and allowed all the staff to use as a way of checking their emails and connecting with loved ones and whatnot. And it must have just been like a Korn emailing list or something. I'd seen that they had announced a UK tour, and I was 6,000 miles away, hoping that I might catch these bands that I'd idolized in Southern California, and they were in the bloody England. And so I remember emailing you going, I've just bought 6 tickets to see Korn in London, and I'm going to fly home 2 weeks early so we could go and see it. And I bought you a ticket because you could drive.
Exactly. That was it.
That was it. So you could drive me, Kevin, everybody else. Yeah. That was just such an incredible experience. It was they released this album called Untouchables, and it was first album out after Issues. It was the first album they'd released since I'd become a fan.
Yeah.
So I just loved everything, and that album famously leaked. I downloaded it, and the full circle is, I guess, Full of Sorrow is a lyric from a song which at the time I thought would have been called Full of Sorrow because the downloaded bloody file was Full of Sorrow.
Yep.
And it actually wasn't called. It was called Bottled Up Inside. So when the album came out, I was like, bastard. So no, I'll have to say it's about something else. It's something, but it was an amazing song. Yeah, we went to the O2, didn't we? And saw them, and I distinctly remember me and you pushed our way deep into the thick of it whilst we were waiting for it to start up, and I was just feeling so amped and so ready to see them live, and see how big a sound this was going to be. And they had this huge fake television screen, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they start with a song called "Here to Stay," and there's this
static,
this open riff, and then you hear the cymbals sort of crash in, and the screen drops, and he just starts headbanging, and I just lost my shit. I just went ape. I just my forehead was touching my knees, my hair was flinging back, I was throwing people around, and it just erupted. And I think in that moment you were like, "What the fuck?"
It wasn't just me though. It wasn't just me. Do you remember the parents with those young kids? Because you were 18, so I was 21, 22, and 18, 19, I was like 21, 22, and those young kids, they can only have been like, I don't know, 11 or 12, and they'd obviously been there early. They were obviously at the front with their mums. Then that goes off, and they're like, "Oh, my life is over." What is happening? And we were like pushing away from each other to create a space for them to escape.
Yeah. Where in my head, I don't even remember children. I remember you making a space And I thought, "Ooh, I can dance in that space." Who are these kids? Get out of the way. Remember, the security came over and told me to calm down, and they were like, "Calm
Well,
down. This is a rock
the
concert."
the irony of that the irony of that, Joe, is when the first pit formed, right? We were right on the edge of it, and you were holding my arm. You were linking in my arm before this all started, right? You're like, "Don't let go, because it's all going to move. It's all going to move. So stay on, stay connected." And then the pit started to form, and we were at the edge, and you were going, "Don't go in there, don't go in there. It's going to be, oh my god, it'll be insane. Don't go in there." Next thing I know, you are in the center of it, headbanging, waiting for the music to drop, and then the music drops and you disappeared because everybody jumped on top of you. I'm like, well, that's it. He's dead. This is the moment he died.
And that was one of how many times did we end up doing that? Because this all snowballed. We went to Download Festival, didn't we? And when we saw the likes of Metallica when they'd been in hiding for such a long time. We saw them do a surprise gig. We ripped it up in many a pit.
Yeah, many a pit. Well,
yeah,
many a pit. But I guess the thing for me that feels really important here, as ever in all of these podcasts, we're asking people to really share their experiences of where and how they find meaning and the things that are really significant to them that they want to make contributions to, and the journey and understanding all of that. And we talk about three things. We talk about how people have uncovered this sense of purpose, how people kind of understand it, and how they unleash it in leaps of faith. And this for me feels like a really important part of your kind of discovery of self, this kind of journey to connecting the dots in who you are. And you mentioned earlier on about you never really understand the significance of things until after they're completed. Like, when you look back, how do you make sense of the importance of that period of time for you?
I guess it was a lot of things, and when married now, 2 children, and rapidly approaching 40, and life is very different now to how it was back when you're a teenager or heading towards your 20s, and everything is so real and big in your life because that's all you know at that point in your life. And for me, it was the form of transportation for me to experience my adolescence, puberty, being a teenager, young adulthood. It was a thing that held my hand and walked me through it. We have a great family. We have great parents. We're really close. I always had somebody that I could talk to. I always sort of felt supported, but equally, mentally at that age, you start fighting your own little battles, and they're yours. And music for me was a way of being able to chew on it, I guess. Hearing somebody else's battle with things made me feel less alone in them. And for me, full of sorrow, I don't regret it. It's a daft tattoo, but you come out the back end of that, and I thought, well, I lived that. We did that. We did lots of things. And you mentioned at the beginning, eventually that turned into Blood Divided, and the band we played for 8 years. We played all up and down the country, and we played hundreds of shows, really. And I got to experience much of that feeling on stage, and full of sorrow was just this way that propelled me on to this next bit. I guess that was that.
I love it. 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 Thank you. So if we kind of stay with this this kind of moment of or these moments of discovery, when you think and look back over your journey, are there other things that really stand out for you that have shaped who you are today? I mean, that's a ridiculously big question.
Yeah, it is. And if we'd done this question, if you hadn't mentioned that I have a ridiculous tattoo in the beginning, I don't think I would have discussed my musical influence as being a pivotal point in my life. And it so clearly is.
Yeah.
But
so where would you have started if I hadn't have taken us down that rabbit hole?
I mean, it would have ultimately taken us to the music and being in the band and performing. Uh, but I mean, are you asking for crossroads in my life? Are you asking for these defining points where I could have gone a certain way and didn't? And I think that you share similar ones with everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody finishes, or if many people finish school and have an opportunity to go on and do sixth form or college. And um, I mean, you're very blessed to have an incredible group of friends, a really good group of core friends who I'm very fortunate to also share in that friendship group and call them good friends of my own. And um, I too had a good group of friends growing up, and then secondary school and hand in hand with the heavy music and everything else, my friendship group was sort of ruptured and it broke down, and whereas a lot of them all stayed together and went into sixth form and then went on and stayed locally or whatever else. I guess my first real splinter point was
yeah,
that I decided to go to college,
yeah,
and I was the only person to do it. I think almost everybody else just didn't leave school. He just went
yeah,
to sixth form, and I
yeah.
didn't. I bounced. Um,
I am out. See
yeah,
you later.
and that was like a big sense of independence. I had to get 2 buses to get to college, so I went to college very little. Because I had to get a bus into the city centre, and there's loads of cool stuff to do in the city centre before you get to actually get to college. And if you had a lecture really early in the morning, that is a lot of work. You have to get up really early to get them buses. And it also turned out that there was not these like focus group companies that would be operating near the bus centre in Broadmarsh in Nottingham at the back of the hotels there. So I'd get off the bus and wait for a guy with a flyer, be like, earn yourself 20 quid wearing Levi jeans all morning. And I'm like, yep, that's me. And we'd go and just like watch something or try something on or just give our feedback about a product that's coming out, get given 20 quid, go to the movies, grab some lunch, get back on the bus, go home. How was school, son? Oh, it was great. Yeah. Um,
But I think this for me is significant because of what that experience then uncovered, or it that it allowed you to focus on, which is of my earliest memories, you wanted to be like dad.
yeah.
And I remember you like putting on shirts when you were really little because you wanted to be like dad, and I couldn't think of anything worse than wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
And the irony of making the choice to go to college and then not really going to college and the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for, the moment of awakening, which was mum and dad realizing that you hadn't been going and you weren't getting any exemplar education, um which as an older sibling was a total joy to see
Yeah, of course it was. I was always hoping that Rebecca would fall off, and she
yeah,
never
to
did.
see you go through the blender in that way. And maybe we'll come back to that in a second. But what did that ultimately lead to? It led to you working with dad, which was,
It
I
did.
think, your ambition in the first instance.
Nepotism's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I I very much, yeah, you bang on there. Dad is such. I mean, you should get him on this show. I mean, that's the better discussion. I mean, wow, what a life, what a tale to tell. Uh, and yeah, I think from the earliest age, he just always seemed so cool. He always drove a cool car, and he always looked good. And I don't know what he did. I don't have a clue what he did, but I just knew that he put a shirt on and he had a briefcase, and he was important. And I thought I can be important. I can carry a briefcase. That sounds great. Let's do this. And so and computers, I guess, because
Yeah,
a huge love of technology, and we were a Mac family from the mid to late 80s all through the 90s when they were not cool and no one had really even had computers at home. And we had Macs. We had a Mac Classic and Mac SE30, and in our living room, and we'd get up really early and play Chuck Yeager's on it and Harrier Jump Jet and whatnot. And yes, so I guess I went to college and I studied business. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to be dad. Dad was in business. I'll study business. Right? I mean,
yeah.
whatever that was. So I did that for 2 years. I studied business, That didn't go particularly well. I passed, as far as my CV is concerned, right? With distinction, again, as far as my CV is concerned. But very much came home, and Dad, somewhat in his disappointment, I guess, threw a book at me and said, "Learn that. You got a job on Monday." And he threw a book at me for an application called FileMaker.
I was going to say, it wasn't a metaphorical book. It was
No,
an
it was a
actual
real book. It was
physical
big. The
tome.
bloody thing was. There's no internet back then. They're printed like this thick. He hit me with this book and told me to learn it, and they'd be working it for me. And that's 18 years old, and I'm 39 now, and I still professionally work within FileMaker.
Yeah.
He threw this book at me, and I lent into it, and I learnt it, enjoyed it. I had a bit of a I don't know, a penchant for it. I guess it was because I was pretty good with it, and yeah, at 18 I started working for Dad. Yeah.
Yeah, the moment of the kind of the book throwing, I remember the kind of the conversations it was going down over the kitchen table and going, wow, this is this is a big one. Like, as much as I might enjoy the you getting in trouble like periodically, this feels a bit epic.
Yeah, it was always me around that table, wasn't it? I never remember your epic or Rebecca's epic conversation.
So yeah, well, like talk to me about the middle child experience. Okay, like let's put that on the table, because
don't, because I think there's a book in there somewhere.
I think there have been many books written. It's, what's your
no one's heard my story though. No, that's not there, because I was going to come across like some sort of adolescent twat.
Well, I think that's really unfair to you and the journey that you've been on, and also, like, part of the reason for us investing in doing these podcasts is bringing real people and real stories, and the kind of the journeys that we've all been on to try and figure out who we are and what's important to us. And our realities and our environments shape who we are. I think there was a really great bit of research that actually was showing that 75% of our behavior is influenced by the environment that we find ourselves within. So you in the middle of all of that, and your experience of all of that and how that shaped you was similar but different to me, in the same way it was similar but different to Rebecca. And we really talked about where and how we find meaning, and there were some really significant overlaps for both of us, but actually it also plays out really, really differently in terms of how we manage the expectation of others, positively and negatively.
Sure.
Like Rebecca, talked about wants to absolutely nail things. Like, perfectionism is, a real challenge for her. For me, I don't suffer from perfectionism at all. I'm quite happy to go, well, that feels like my best effort, or that feels good enough. Yet living up to the expectations of others, or not disappointing the perceived expectation of others,
sure.
That's massive for me. So it's been really interesting to kind of think about how those environments have shaped us differently, although the environment was the same, and it was one of abundant love.
Yeah, well, we certainly grew up in a household where it was always told us that a degree wasn't seen as being some great achievement. It was seen as baseline education qualification for your future. So it was kind of expected. I certainly felt that it was expected of us. I always felt supported in whatever we would have chosen to have done, but perhaps that was just the parental prod that you needed to be like, no, you've got to get your GCSE so you can get your A levels. You've got to get your A levels so you can get into university. You've got to go to university so you've got a degree. If you've got a degree, you're then you've got your foot in the door of getting perhaps a half decent job. And I knew that perhaps, well, actually, I certainly remember I was in college, and we were doing our UCAS forms for uni, and I just had no idea. Just none of it excited me. I but it was in the back of my head. It was just like I had to put somewhere, I had to do something, I had to go somewhere. And me and you spoke, and you were like, the worst thing you can do is just go to university and get a degree due to expectation, or not knowing what it is you want. Because if you are not driven or inspired to study a subject, you're just not gonna get anything from it, and you're gonna find yourself doing 3 years somewhere that you don't want to be. um, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and you're not going to pull out of it what you hoped to have done. And I mean, you probably phrase it much better than that, but so that was me. I was like, well, I'm out then.
Yeah, I'm not being funny, Joe. That almost feels like you've just summarised my actual lived experience of university. So I'm not sure it would have been much more articulate. It would probably just have been that.
You'll end up with 400 VHS tapes just as the advent of the DVD comes out.
Yeah, which are still in mum and dad's loft, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, but and a gap year wasn't something that the working class did, as far as So I wasn't looking for a gap year, and that was, I made that choice. I'm not going to university, but that wasn't much of a choice, in a sense that when I got home and announced that to our folks, it was right then. Rent's due on a Monday.
Yep.
Yeah, and then boff, paying my own bills, and suddenly was very independent almost overnight. So, son, as long as you are living under our roof and you are in education, you would be taken care of. But at the moment you are not in education, well, you deem yourself an adult, and you'll uh, behave accordingly.
Yeah,
And
pay your way is the phrase, right?
pay your way, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't super harsh, but it was enough for me to be bitter about it 20 something years later. Jimbo and Becky don't pay for their phone. Still.
Okay, I think the bitterness is like.
Hey, you asked. You went there. Middle child syndrome. You asked the question. Yeah.
Well, I guess in that regard, there were just some very different experiences. Like the pathways at that point in time were where we really all started to kind of diverge.
Yeah.
So what about other moments then, Joe, in terms of not just kind of reflecting on the moments that have shaped who you are, but also thinking about leaps of faith, the places where you have been courageous in making the choices. I think that example that you just gave there about, and I remember really clearly, Dad. To just bear with me a second. I'm going to come back to this. I'm just going to pause it because there's loads of noise.
Yeah. So when before you sort of like went downstairs, I basically I'd been working for Dad.
Yeah, I was in the middle of posing your question. So, John, you'll notice that there's been a pause there. It's just because there was quite a lot of noise from downstairs, and so we needed to pause to sort that out. That's all sorted now, so we're kind of coming back into it. And it'd be great if we could kind of edit into this question, which is, you've described moments where there were real leaps of faith on your part, and I'm wondering actually if there were other moments of kind of almost courage in the choices that you made because of the life that you wanted to lead going forwards, and those kind of almost these decisions where you felt like you were going into the unknown, but there was a part of you, there was an intuition, there was a kind of a faith that it's going to be important to go and make that choice for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I had started working for Dad, and I was he'd thrown me a few clients, or like we'd gotten a few clients, and I'd started writing these software solutions for these people, and they'd been really excited by what I'd done for them, and in certain instances they'd been big hits, and they'd like replaced the need for people, and I had all these impacts with these companies that I'd go into and work with, develop systems for, and then come away from, and we were working with dad. We were a part of like a northern contingent. The main company back then was down in Cambridge, and so I only really sat and worked with just a few of us up there in Nottingham.
Yeah.
Um, and so I very much got used to this pattern of clients would get in touch. I would go in, I would sit with them, I would learn their needs, how they operated as a company. I would then go away and I would come back with a pitch as to what I could write that could sort of meet their needs. And I always just had absolute creative freedom with all of it. Um,
Yeah.
and I liked that. It was good. I mean, I'm not particularly great at being told what to do. Um, and I have a big thing about respect. I'm all for respect and loyalty. And I think uh, I think they're key cornerstones um, for me. Uh, so the idea of having a boss, I guess, that was difficult, and it was all right because it was dad.
Yeah.
Um,
If you're gonna have a boss, might as well be
yeah,
the guy that's bossed you all this time anyway.
yeah, exactly. And he very much did, run things like a business at home at times. So so working for him was fine, and that's how we operated. And then anyway, dad then sold the company, and the stuff that I was doing for him was very separate to what that company actually did.
Yeah.
um, so when the company was sold, dad didn't really sell what I did with the company. So things there was a lot happening then. um, I'd found myself spending a lot of time caring for our grandmother in her failing health. Um, work, because the company was being sold, there wasn't a great push for getting clients in. So I was
Yeah.
mainly in a support role of clients that already existed.
Yeah.
That wasn't filling my time. Sort of dad had sat me down going, right, I think you need to perhaps look at getting other work. And I'm like in my 20s, and
Yeah.
I have long ginger hair, and I'm trying to grow a beard at this point, and my nails are all black, and I'm moody, and I just want to get out there and bang my head and have a great time. And so I was trying to work out a way of like, okay, well, how can I work,
Yeah.
support myself, and really become a rock star, because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so when the company sold, I just went, oh, well, I'll just have all of these clients then, and they can just pay me directly. And turns out, being paid a salary compared to being paid what they were paying the company was I could have made a lot more money for a long time, instead of just dad just filtering me out whatever he pays his
I mean, I
kid.
wouldn't call it slave labor what I was doing for
Exactly,
dad,
yeah,
but
yeah. Nepotism is a
the
mother.
chains came off.
Yeah, that was it. So I locked a few of them down to some support contracts, and I soon realised I actually have to work very hard to earn a lot more money than I'd ever earned. And that made a lot of sense to me. I just kind of felt like, well, I didn't have a drive in me to create a company. I wasn't looking to develop a product or deliver a service that had legs. I wasn't looking to grow the company. I was just looking to do good work the least number of hours for the most amount of money,
Yeah.
so that I could do other stuff
Yeah.
outside of that. And I think that's what I did. And so I created my own company um, off the back of these core clients, and um, I'm good at it. I'm good at it. And when I write something, and all it takes is for a client of that client, a customer of that client, to come in and go, "Oh, what's all this you're doing it all through?" And then they'll be like, "Oh, we work with a guy called Joe Glover, and he does this," and then I'll get a phone call, and then I'll be doing something for that guy,
Yeah.
and that was enough, and I could just pick it up and put it down whenever I wanted. And um,
I
I
think
was in
it's
a
really
relation.
interesting that you talked about your intention to do all of this was to fund your future stardom as a rock as a rock star, and actually, how did you feel most of the time? It was caring for our grandmother. And I think this is one of the many beautiful paradoxes that make you who you are, actually, Joe. Is you created the opportunity for freedom and space, and what did you invest and what did you fill that space with? Actually, caring for a member of the family.
Yeah, yeah, Nan's, yeah, it was incredible. Just an incredible woman. Um, yeah, and we were very close. I guess I was able to take her home. To begin with, it was just a case of would run her home when she'd come over at the weekends, and then
Yeah.
um, she'd had like everybody else, their health was failing, and before I knew it, it wasn't a case of just taking her home at the weekends. It was, I'll pop in the morning, see if she's all right. I can go see her at lunch, and then go and see her in the evening, and then spending more and more just one-on-one time with her, and um, hearing her stories, and then seeing her humanity. I guess the older she got, and she'd need somebody to take her to the hospital, and then that'd be me. I'd be quite happy to go do it, and then the adventures that we'd have, because she once had an epileptic fit when I went to a cataract appointment, but I didn't even know she had epilepsy. You know? I've been caring for her for ages, and they're like, I'm sat with her, and the doctors there going, "So do you have epilepsy?" You know, and I'm like, "No, she's all good." And they start flashing lights in her eyes, and then and she'd been taking these suppressant drugs for 50 years, so it wasn't like she started having a fit. She regressed. She regressed and just forgot how to speak English, and was speaking only Maltese, and she thought she was a young girl, and it just wigged me out,
Yeah.
uh, but seeing, it was definitely this moment where I wasn't her grandson anymore.
Yeah.
She wasn't this position of, or she wasn't an authoritative parental figure.
Yeah.
She was under my care, and I love her to pieces, and I wanted to be that guy. And
Yeah.
it asks a lot of you when you're in your early 20s, and you're helping your grandmother on and off the toilet, and getting her pajamas on, and getting her dressed, and cleaning her teeth.
Yeah.
Well, sorting her dentures out, and then those nights where you drop her off, and she'd be sad and upset because she was lonely, and
Yeah.
afraid, and didn't want to go to sleep on her own. And see, you know, you just sit in a reading chair and put her to bed, and wait for her to fall asleep, and then sneak out, and do that over and over and over again. And it was hard, but you create this brilliant relationship with her, and then ultimately she went into palliative care, and just being with her all day, every day.
Yeah. And what, again, I think you use that language really beautifully of like chapters, and being able to make sense of things after the fact. Like when you reflect back on that period of time now after the fact, what kind of impact did that have on who you are now?
Um, uh, I don't know. We're a loving family. I think I'm a compassionate and nice guy, and I continue to be so. It fueled a bitterness when she died. She was a devout Roman Catholic, and this is a tangent and maybe not a subject for this discussion, but I certainly have an issue with her faith, and where how I think that failed her,
Mm.
and I felt that she deserved more and deserved better from, not from her understanding of her faith, because that was just pure love, that was pure
Yeah.
faith, but from what her actual faith, her church, her religious leaders, people that were meant to be there for her. I think that part of her faith absolutely failed her,
Yeah.
and I left a
That
horrible taste in my mouth. I got
that sense of like perceived community and belonging that actually in the moments of real vulnerability didn't show up.
sort of shit. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so whatever. So yeah, yeah. I don't really know what to. it was, you come out the back of it, and that's missing from your life. She's no longer a part of that part of your life. I still worked. I still performed in the band. You just aim it in a different direction, and
Yeah.
you suddenly realise that the lyrics you're writing are suddenly more influenced by that of Catholicism and and whatnot.
And
And that's how you. And I guess that's how you grieve. I guess that's how I dealt with it. I would.
and yet again, Joe, you make that point of, when I thought about this conversation, I didn't think music was going to come up at all, and yet again, here it makes another appearance, actually, in being able to navigate another really significant moment or turning point. But the kind of the connection to it and the expression through it was different.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. We're connecting the dots in the core,
Yeah.
as well as that. The kind of cornerstones that you describe of respect and loyalty. Like, I'm sat here watching you struggling for words to describe the impact of that moment, and actually there's a part of it which is you just really expressing those cornerstones, or really even not necessarily laying the foundation, but firming the foundation of those cornerstones in terms of who you are. I heard a really great story of John Lewis, the man that founded John Lewis and Partners and Waitrose, etc. And he had what they call a founding idea, and it's almost like that kind of personal sense of values, or the threads that have shaped who we are and are really significant, and that actually, as you evolve through your life, a sense of purpose, or however you make sense of a sense of purpose, evolves with your experiences. But there are just some foundational ideas that hold in place who you are and where you find meaning. So let's pivot. Let's talk about where you're at now, and talk about the kind of the future. What are some of the things that feel most meaningful to you right now?
Well, life is very different now, isn't it? I think you say goodbye to your 20s, and suddenly you try and drag your legs through your 30s, still thinking you're in your 20s, trying to live that 20s life. For some, I guess, because I think life for many gets very real, but it didn't overly for me. Much, I'm sure, to my wife's annoyance, we were together for 10 years before I asked her to marry me, and then marriage and children all sort of happened then very quickly, and was all very, very fast. We, as you mentioned at the beginning, I married a doctor. Well, it takes a long time to become a doctor, and I didn't fall in love with a doctor. I fell in love with a teenager who, had a lip ring and liked heavy music, and who was simply the most intelligent human being that I'd ever spent any time with, who at 16 was better read than most people in their 50s, and had this aspiration to, at that time at least, she'd wanted to get into English literature, and I think we'd gotten through college, and she'd had an offer from one of the big universities to study English literature. And then, like myself, her grandmother suddenly fell ill and was lost quickly, and she, in this moment, went, "Why do I?" She was obviously aware of her own brilliance, but she pivoted then and went, "Well, forget this. I can do this. My love of literature is my love of literature.
Yeah.
I don't need to study it." And she went into medicine, and I, being in love with her, we started that journey, and that was perhaps the first chapter post, "Hey, look, I'm 30 and I got past 27 and didn't die, and I tried really, really hard."
Turns out I'm not a rock star.
Yeah,
Why would you want to do that?
I was wounded. Absolutely.
Look at me just surviving.
I know, right? And it's funny to say, but I do detest it when rock stars quit drinking, quit the drugs, I'm like, no, you have one job, and that is to live life fast, right, and then die. That's I mean, I know that's awful, but I was happy to be a martyr. Uh, but that didn't happen. Instead, the band came to an end when we lost one of our guitarists, and I was very much in love, and I followed Kate up north. We went up north, and I stayed with her through university. I worked. I was still doing what I was doing with my own company, and that paid the bills and whatnot. And it takes like a long time to become a doctor. So she was at university. She had no sciences, I think, at A level. So she did pre-med, and then she intercalated, and then she did a master's. It's like, how long can one person remain a student? And then she qualified. Okay, you graduate, but there you haven't qualified yet. You got another 5 years to do that.
Yeah.
And the entire time, it is hard work. It's not particularly well paid, and
I mean, to be fair to her, it wasn't like she was dragging her heels. There were also, children in that time period.
yeah. Sorry, this was granted. Okay,
I'm pulling your leg.
yeah. No, it's no excuse. It's 2023.
She could have just kept.
You could
going.
do it all. You could strap a child to her chest, and it's a urinary infection. Next, it's another urinary infection. Next. Plus, I watched all 22 seasons of ER while she was doing her degree. I felt perfectly qualified to weigh in there with her training. Yeah, so we began our life together. We got engaged, and during that engagement, she became pregnant with our son, and I think that's another life kicker, isn't it? It was we hadn't. Dad always said to me, and perhaps to you, he says, Joe, there's never a good time to do anything. There's never a perfect time for anything to happen. Things will happen, and just lean into them. And that was certainly the case with, when should I get married, or when should I get engaged, or when's the right time to become a parent, or should I become a parent? And Dad was always like, nah, just do it, or it'll happen. If it happens, it happens. And it turns out it just bloody happens. Just bloody happened twice, didn't it? So we had.
I love the fact that two of the brightest people I know, one of them literally being a qualified doctor, still feel like pregnancy. It just happens.
It just happens. Yeah. No, my wife. No, let's not. This is going to go on the internet. She's an incredible person. Anyway, we had Ezra, and I must admit, I was ill prepared to become a parent or to become a father. I just took it all in my stride to a point where I just thought, yeah, I'll nail this. I can. We had nephews. I'm good with my nephews. It turns out giving them back is very different to not giving
being
them
able
back.
to.
Yeah. And me and Kate are very much a team, and my wife is very much she's a strong woman, a strong personality, and she was very much, we are a team, we'll do this equally. This is a 50-50% deal. Obviously post-birth, and
you were doing some really good back rubbing, really good.
I didn't know.
I've got fatigue in my shoulders.
Actually, I think during pregnancy, she was on gas and air in a birthing pool, and I'm there trying to support her best I can, and then she just kept doing more and more gas and air, and the more and more gas and air she took, the less involved I suddenly start to feel in this birthing process, to the point where she was quite out of it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not happy with my level of involvement in this process. I was like, midwife, is there such thing as too much gas and air? Because I think maybe she should give it a rest. And I was immediately shot with a look from my wife that was, you can just leave. I don't need you here.
We can make your involvement less.
Yes,
right now.
Because if it's you or I spend the rest of my life with this canister, I'm going to live my life with this canister. This canister takes me to places that you've never done, Ginger Boy. But Ezra was born, and you become a father, and suddenly that journey begins, doesn't it? And I think everything changes after that. But it isn't the Del Boy moment. It's not the Only Fools and Horses moment where you stand on the balcony and hold this infant and look at the stars and tell this life that you've created that everything's going to be all right and you're always going to be there for them. because it's 1:05 and you've been awake for 14 hours and you're covered in your wife's
Fluid.
fluid.
So I get in there quick.
Yeah, good man. And edit that one out.
I can call you back.
Yeah, and you're exhausted, and this thing's screaming, and it's ugly. Like, and its head was a big square, and I'm like, what? How? It's not. It didn't come out of a square, but it's definitely got corners. And and you just think, oh, the blood, and then the next morning they're like, good job, fuck off, and you have to go home, and then you don't sleep for 6 years. You know, my son, my blessed son, turns 6 soon, and he only has just begun sleeping through the night. So if anybody out there's looking forward to welcoming their first child,
Good luck.
Count your blessings. Count
Good
your
luck.
blessings. Yes.
Good luck.
And I guess that certainly set the table for where I am in my life now. My wife then became a mother, and she's first and foremost, and I think perhaps true of many parents, but they've become first and foremost a parent. And so my wife's education or qualifications took a step back, because she absolutely wanted to be, she wanted to raise our kids. Well, that doesn't sound right, because she didn't. We had Ezra, and she was a mother. She is a mother. But she finished university, and we took our opportunity to move, and we moved to North Wales, and our entire support network, our entire lives were in the Midlands. And whilst my wife certainly has its heritage is here in Wales, she is of strong Welsh stock.
That's what you have to tell the locals.
I have to tell the locals. Yeah, that's what keeps me safe.
Yeah.
And I am a man of Wales.
So your bones don't become part of the walls.
That's it. Yeah. Clearing the space for me. Yeah, we moved out here, and we moved out here with no parents to help us with our brand new baby. And we did it. We're on our own, and that's really hard when you grow up really close to your siblings and really close to your parents, and as an adult certainly feel like I have a fantastic relationship with my parents now as an adult, and know how important my children are to my parents, and for them not to be just down the road. Even now, it's the most difficult thing, and we're only an hour. We're only 3 hours west of you, but as a defining moment, it's that opportunity or it's that time to step up. I guess it's not a case of doing as little as possible for the most amount of money, or it's not the case of just getting by so that you can do another show or something. Well, I folded the company and I went looking for a job. I wanted to be employed. I wanted to put my feet down. And the secret to living in such a beautiful part of the world is, if you are fortunate enough to find a way to have the landscape look after you, then don't take that for granted. And things have a way of working out, and I really struggled to find work doing what I do, and absolutely landed on my feet with a civil engineering consultancy here in North Wales that happened to use the same platform that I'd been developing at that point for almost 20 years. And I sort of walked in for an interview as an IT junior, just looking so that I could contribute towards bills, and left with a role that wasn't otherwise offered at the beginning of that, and can hand on heart say that they've looked after me in a way that I have such a respect for, that I've planted my feet. I'm not out there looking for the bigger, better deal. I feel supported, and a part of something, and That's
Respect and
crucial.
loyalty. Respect and
And
loyalty
loyalty.
coming up again.
So, and that's me. So as long as I feel respected, I will remain loyal.
In all aspects of my life.
In all aspects of my life, yeah,
And
sure.
and talk to me about when you look forward from this point in time. So, in this conversation, you've just been able to share with such clarity and kind of with such richness moments that, it's not just been about connecting the dots in terms of the moments that have shaped you. It's also been laden with meaning. Like this concept of respect and loyalty has just kind of emerged multiple times. And I talk and I believe really deeply in leaps of faith. I believe in those moments of courage where you don't have the answers, you don't know what is necessarily to come, but there just is a level of emotional conviction to want to try something or go in a particular direction. And how many of those, just even in the time that we've been talking, how many of those have been true for you? And I don't even know how aware you are or have been of that every single time you've gone, no, actually this is what I want and this is where I'm going to go, and that sense of courage and vulnerability that's associated with it. But when you look forward from this point, what are you most excited about?
I sort of feel as though it's only now at 40 that I'm starting to feel like I have a sense of clarity and control over how my life looks in a way. Like yourself, I once worked at McDonald's at Trent Bridge, and I had a shift. I had a boss there. I can't. Unfortunately, his name's just I've forgotten it. Floyd was his first name, and he one of those life lessons that you always remember. And he sat me down because I'm pretty sure I'm the only person in existence ever to have been fired from McDonald's. And he told me, he said that in life, Joe, you will play the car money game. Better car, more money. Better car, more money. Better car, more money. And your life will, and a better car and a bigger house or more money will dictate your life. And it it rang true, but it wasn't at all for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it? I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't take this seriously at all. Like, and thus I wasn't there for very long. Because there's only so many times you can go on an all-nighter and then turn up at work the next morning and have 4 hours sleep in the stock room before you get caught. But so at 40, um, the pieces are falling together. But I have two beautiful children, and I have an incredible wife, and I'm just trying to create a life, just trying to live a life. And as much as this government makes that increasingly difficult, I just want to be here, and I just want to be present, and I just wish to spend more time on my own. Yeah. No, you know what I mean. I just want to watch my kids grow up, and I want to see what the future brings me. I'm excited for it. You mentioned you don't know what's to come, but you kind of, I think, as existence begins to bend. I don't know how a better way of putting it. Life will take you down a path, and as you walk that path, others will present themselves, and you can choose to um, lean in their direction, I guess, and make new things happen for yourself. And this sense of leap of faith is so true, and it's so difficult to get out of your comfort zone to take those first steps. And you felt that I had done this time and time again, but it never felt like that at the time. They just felt like the obvious choices in order to achieve what I was hoping to achieve at that point in time. And where that differs to now is that I feel that if I were to change my circumstances, it would be from a decision to do something greatly different. And I don't feel that just because I'm 40 and my children are young and it's an important age, that I don't feel trapped in my current position. So I couldn't tell you what the future brings, but I'm excited to watch all of our children grow up and spend their I don't know what will become of my children.
Well, I think the kind of the central tenet of all of this work of the Excitable Soul for me is this idea of helping people truly understand where their sense of self-worth comes from, and just to feel enough. And the way that you've just been able to describe and articulate that actually all you want right now is to be present and just to be in the life that you've got. I don't know if there's a better way of being able to describe that, which is there is a sense of peace and calm in the here and now. And actually, I'm open to the universe. If things come in, then I'm, potentially lean into that. And if they don't, then that's okay too, because actually what I'm focused on is the here and now. And I think for all of us, we can get caught up in what's next and chasing. And the only thing that we can actually really invest and influence is here and now. The old Kung Fu Panda wisdom, right? Master Oogway, the great wisdom that he provides. The past is history, the future is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. And that's probably the right note for us to pause our conversation, and for me to say a massive thank you for just taking the time, for being so open, for being so authentic, for being so just true to who you are and the journey that you've been on. And mega conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimbo. And I look forward to all those people listening to this in 4 or 5 years when they've just listened to your latest episode and you've just sat down with the likes of, whomever is leading our world then. And then going back to the early ones and going, he has a brother. Yeah. You can find me on the socials. Okay.
Amazing.
All right. Cheers, Jimbo.
Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.